She never believed in arranged marriages. He never believed in love. But when fate brought them together in the coastal city of Busan, their lives changed forever, not with passion, but with silence. Not with roses, but with distance. This isn't just a story about a wedding. This is about what happens after the vows. When two strangers are forced to share a home, a life, and maybe, eventually, their hearts. Keep listening to uncover how one unexpected marriage turned into the most unforgettable love story Busan had ever seen. The sound of the waves crashing against the Busan shore echoed through the grand wedding hall. The view was breathtaking, but the tension in the air between the bride and groom was undeniable. Jaehyun, the eldest son of the Kang family, stood in a black tuxedo, expression unreadable. Known across Korea as a sharp-minded entrepreneur, he didn't believe in distractions, especially not emotional ones. To him, this wedding was business. A merger of two traditional families, a duty he couldn't refuse. On the other side of the altar, Eun-chae, a writer from Seoul with fire in her soul and rebellion in her eyes, wore her wedding dress like armor. She didn't want this. She had dreams, of travel, of poetry, of love that burned bright. But her mother's illness and the financial crisis had backed her into a corner. They exchanged vows with frozen lips, avoided each other's gaze, and when the crowd applauded, both smiled only for the cameras. "I guess this is it," Eun-chae muttered later that evening, standing in the luxurious but cold apartment that would now be their shared space. Jaehyun nodded. "You can have the master bedroom. I'll sleep in the guest room. This marriage is just a formality. We don't need to pretend." Eun-chae laughed bitterly. "Trust me, I have no plans to." Thus began the strange union. Their schedules barely crossed. Jaehyun left early for work, returned late. Eun-chae spent her time writing short stories, pouring her resentment and loneliness onto pages. The house was always clean. Always quiet. Always tense. But despite the distance, small details started to stand out. He noticed she always placed a second cup of tea on the table, even though he never drank it. She noticed he left the light on in the hallway, maybe so she wouldn't feel alone. They never spoke of these things. One day, she overheard him on a call. "I'm married, yes. But it's not real. It's just complicated." The words stung. Not because she had feelings for him, but because they echoed what she feared. That she was invisible. That she didn't matter. That night, she slammed her notebook shut and took a walk along the beach, feeling colder than the ocean breeze. He watched her from the balcony, eyes unreadable again. They were two souls trapped in a contract. Two hearts too afraid, or too proud, to speak first. And in Busan, the city where love stories bloomed by the sea, theirs hadn't even begun. The days turned into weeks, and Jaehyun and Eun-chae lived like polite strangers. The apartment in Busan was spacious and beautiful, perched above the ocean cliffs, but inside, it felt like a museum. Quiet. Cold. Untouched. Eun-chae began to journal more, sitting by the window every morning with her laptop and a cup of green tea. It was the only place where her emotions had a voice. She wrote stories of women trapped in loveless marriages, of silent husbands with aching hearts. Sometimes, she wondered if her characters were really just reflections of her own life. Jaehyun was always working. His tech firm had just launched a major deal, and he was busy impressing investors. His schedule was full, his expressions blank, his thoughts guarded. But sometimes, when he came home late and heard the soft click of her keyboard, he paused. Just for a second. Before moving on. One evening, Eun-chae was cooking ramen, something simple, warm, nostalgic. The smell filled the apartment. Jaehyun walked in, surprised. "You cook?" "I eat," she replied flatly. "And I don't like takeout every night." He didn't respond, but instead poured himself water and sat across from her. An awkward silence filled the kitchen. "I used to make this for my mom," she added, quietly. Before her treatment started. Jaehyun looked up, his expression softening for the first time. "How is she?" "She's trying to stay strong. This marriage paid for her hospital. So, thank you, I guess." He nodded slowly. "You didn't have a choice." "Neither did I." That night didn't change everything, but it cracked something. Still, the wall between them remained. Sometimes, she tried to ask him about his past, but he always deflected. "Why don't you ever talk about yourself?" she asked one evening, both of them watching the sea in silence. Because talking doesn't fix anything, he said. And maybe he was right. Or maybe he was just scared of what talking would unlock. Eunchae received an offer from a small publishing house. They wanted to publish her short stories. She was ecstatic, until she saw the look on Jaehyun's face when she told him. That's great, he said carefully. Just be careful not to reveal too much. You think I'm going to embarrass you, she snapped. I think my family doesn't need the world reading about how broken our marriage is. That night, she cried in the shower, quietly, because even now, she couldn't cry where he might hear her. They shared a home, but not a life. They shared a name, but not a heart. One night, Eunchae found an old photo album tucked in a drawer. It was Jaehyun as a child, with his younger sister, smiling in the sunlight. A boy with real laughter, not the man with stone eyes she knew now. She placed it gently on the coffee table and walked away. He found it later and stared at the photo for a long time. The past always had a way of catching up. The walls weren't just between them, they were inside them. Until one rainy night would change that forever. The rain came down like it hadn't in years. Busan skies darkened with heavy clouds, and thunder cracked across the horizon. The wind howled against the apartment windows as if nature itself was tired of the silence between them. Eunchae was at her writing desk, typing when her phone buzzed. A text from Jaehyun. Don't wait up. Emergency at the office. Might be late. Typical. She sighed, shutting her laptop. It was 11 p.m., and the storm only grew louder. She made herself a cup of tea and settled near the living room window, watching lightning flicker over the sea. But then, the second message came. It's not the office. It's my sister. She collapsed. I'm at the hospital. Eunchae didn't hesitate. She grabbed her coat, rushed into the rain, hailed a taxi, and reached the hospital in under 30 minutes, her heart racing faster than the storm outside. She spotted him in the waiting area, soaked from head to toe. For the first time since their wedding, he didn't look composed. He looked like a man lost, eyes red, hands trembling. Jaehyun, she whispered. He looked up. And something in him broke. She had a seizure. The doctors don't know what triggered it. She's stable now, but I haven't seen her like that since. He didn't finish. But she didn't need him to. She sat beside him and gently took his hand. He didn't pull away. That night, she learned the truth. His sister, Minna, had epilepsy since childhood. Their parents had always hidden it from the world, afraid it would stain the family's image. Jaehyun had spent most of his youth taking care of her, fighting for her, protecting her. She's the only one who ever saw me, he murmured. And if I lose her? You won't, Eunchae said firmly. And even if you do, you won't face it alone. He looked at her then, really looked. Her hair was dripping, her cheeks flushed from the cold, her eyes shining not with pity, but with something deeper. That was the moment something shifted between them. They sat together through the night, not as strangers, not as business partners, but as two people connected by pain. When morning came and Minna was cleared to go home, Jaehyun finally exhaled. In the parking lot, as the rain faded into mist, he turned to Eunchae. Why did you come? She smiled softly. Because I'm your wife. And maybe I'm finally ready to act like one. He stared at her. And then, almost cautiously, reached for her hand. It was the first time their fingers interlocked willingly. Back at the apartment, everything felt different. She made him soup. He dried her hair. And when they sat on the couch later that night, watching the quiet sea, Jaehyun spoke without walls for the first time. I've been afraid of needing anyone, he confessed. Because needing means risking. And losing. Eunchae leaned on his shoulder. We're already risking everything just by being in this marriage. Maybe it's time we stop running from it. And in that quiet moment, a storm of another kind passed, the one that had lived inside their hearts all along. The morning after the storm was quiet, unusually still, as though Busan itself was catching its breath. In the apartment overlooking the waves, the silence was different now. It wasn't empty, it was full. Full of warmth. Of peace. Of something unspoken between them that was no longer fear. Jaehyun woke up to the smell of pancakes. Actual, homemade pancakes. He stepped into the kitchen, surprised to see Eunchae dancing a little as she flipped them in the pan. She was wearing one of his oversized shirts, and nothing else. You cook now, he teased. I eat, she replied with a smirk, echoing their earlier exchange. And today, I felt like making something sweet. They ate on the balcony, barefoot, letting the sun kiss their skin. He looked at her like he was really seeing her. Not the girl from the arrangement. Not the stranger he'd married. But Eun-chae, the woman who showed up in the rain for his sister, who held his hand without needing a reason. "I've been thinking," he said quietly, tracing the rim of his coffee cup. "About how we started. About how this wasn't supposed to be anything real." She nodded, sipping her tea. "But it is now," he added. Her eyes met his, full of hope, hesitation, and something that felt dangerously close to love. "You still want out?" he asked, barely above a whisper. She blinked. "I did. At first. Every day, I wondered what I was doing here. But now." He waited. "Now I don't want to leave," she said. "Not unless you tell me to." Jae-hyun didn't answer. Instead, he got up, went inside, and returned with a small velvet box. She stared at it, stunned. "Is this?" He opened it. Inside wasn't the massive diamond from their arranged wedding. It was a simple, gold band, elegant, soft, meaningful. "The first one was for the world," he said. "This one is for us." Her hands trembled as he slid it onto her finger. It fit perfectly, like it had always been waiting for her. He leaned in slowly, carefully, giving her space to move away if she wanted. But she didn't. Their lips met softly, then deeply, not a kiss of duty, but of promise. From that day forward, things changed. Jae-hyun made time for her, not just between meetings, but real time. They went to local cafes, walked along Houndy Beach barefoot, watched movies snuggled under one blanket. Eun-chae published her book. And when the launch event came, Jae-hyun stood in the front row, clapping like it was his own success. Her story, ironically titled Arranged, Not Broken, went viral. Readers across South Korea resonated with the tale of a woman who found love in the most unexpected place, inside a marriage she never wanted. Jae-hyun read it cover to cover one night, alone. When she came home, he pulled her into a hug. "You wrote us," he whispered. "I lived us," she replied. Months passed. Min-ah recovered. Eun-chae's book became a bestseller. Jae-hyun's company expanded into Tokyo. But more importantly, their marriage blossomed into something unshakable. Not because it was arranged. Not because of duty. But because they chose each other. Again. And again. And again. One morning, on the anniversary of their wedding, Jae-hyun took Eun-chae back to the same hilltop where their photo shoot was staged a year ago. This time, there were no photographers. No parents. No expectations. Just them. Under a soft sunset, he looked at her with tears in his eyes. "I didn't fall in love the moment I married you. I fell in love the moment you stopped being my wife on paper, and started being my person." Eun-chae smiled, eyes wet. "And you stopped being a deal, the day you started holding my heart like it mattered." They kissed, not as strangers bound by tradition, but as soulmates who found forever, through something as unexpected as an arranged marriage. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to share it with someone who still believes that love can bloom from the most unexpected places. Globe showing Europe Africa from Busan to love, one wedding really did change everything.